I'm Nima Rajan, and this is Forum Daily News for Friday, February 18th. Tonight, we start in the nation's capital, 22 days into a protest that caught international attention. And due to this protest, Government House Leader Mark Holland says the Speaker and House leaders from all parties have agreed to cancel today's sitting on advice of parliamentary security. He says the government is closely monitoring the police operation in downtown Ottawa and will await further advice from security officials on when the House can reopen. Mr. Holland says today's pause will not affect the outcome, and MPs who want to speak will do so. Outside of Parliament, police officers continued arresting protesters in downtown Ottawa on Friday morning. 3 of the protest organizers have been taken into custody. Over 20 people have been arrested so far. Earlier, police tweeted that protesters were putting children between themselves and officers. Police say those arrested have been charged with various offenses, including mischief. Meanwhile, the Canadian Civil Liberties Association is seeking a judicial review of the government's decision to invoke the Emergencies Act. The group says it does not want to minimize the impacts of the protests across the country, but it's not been proven that the demonstrations endanger the lives, health, or safety of Canadians to where they constitute a national emergency. It says police deal with complex law enforcement issues every day, and they have cleared multiple border blockades across the country without emergency powers. Egregious criminal activity. That is how BC's Public Safety Minister is describing a confrontation at a work site for the Coastal GasLink pipeline, which is under construction near Houston. Mike Farnworth is condemning the incident, saying it could have led to serious injury or loss of life. RCMPs say they were called to the area early Thursday. This was following reports that a group of about 20 people, some allegedly armed with axes, had attacked security guards and smashed vehicle windows. Turning to an interesting study that looks into the connection between COVID-19 and nightmares. Canadian and international researchers are working to understand why people who were previously infected are more likely to have bad dreams. During the pandemic's first wave, researchers studied people who had COVID-19 versus a control group. Both reported more dreams since the start of the pandemic, but the group that had COVID experienced a 50% higher frequency of nightmares. All right, to the West Coast, where Premier John Horgan has laid out BC's new long-term economic plan, which includes a goal of filling 1 million jobs over the next decade. Mr. Horgan says his government will invest nearly $137 million in trades and technology at the BC Institute of Technology campus. He says more than 20 trades and technologies will provide skills training, help develop resilient communities, and mark BC as a world leader in a low-carbon economy. Moving to Saskatchewan now, where the RCMP is preparing for possible demonstrations at 2 border crossings into the United States. Police say the protests are planned for this weekend at the North Portal and North Gate points of entry. RCMP say they are committed to working with anyone involved to minimize the impact on public travel. Police say demonstrators without access to a staging area on private land will be turned away. Ontario's top doctor wants to end workplace COVID-19 vaccination policies by early next month. Dr. Kieran Moore says he is reviewing letters of instruction sent last year to various sectors. Most sectors were instructed to require people to get regularly tested for the virus if they are not vaccinated. But many took their policies further and required all workers to get the shots. Dr. Moore says he thinks the period of highest COVID-19 risk is over, and that means vaccination policies are no longer necessary. In the Maritimes, the Nova Scotia government is providing emergency interim funding for 7 organizations that run rural emergency shelters across the province. Community Services Minister Carla McFarlane says that homelessness is not just an urban problem. Each group will receive $20,000 to stabilize operations and ensure more access to housing and services for those who are homeless this winter. The money will be used to fund housing support services and hotel rooms when shelters are at capacity. And it looks like Team Canada continues its winning streak as Canadian athletes picked up more than 4 medals today in Beijing. Brad Gushue's rink won bronze in men's curling with an 8-5 victory over American John Schuster. Speed skater Laurent Dubray raced to a silver medal in the men's 1,000-meter event. Calgary's Casey Sharp won silver in the women's free ski halfpipe ahead of Rachel Carker from Erin, Ontario, who took the bronze. Canada now has 24 medals. All right, stay with us. We'll be back with our cryptocurrency and digital asset update with Catherine Murray from The Buck Stops Here. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. Up next, Forum Daily's weekly cryptocurrency and digital asset update with Catherine Murray, host of The Buck Stops Here. All yours, Catherine.
Thanks, Seema. Hello, everyone, and welcome to your weekly cryptocurrency and digital asset update. I am Catherine Murray. Well, we have seen cryptocurrencies trend lower alongside the equity markets this week, really driven by concerns and volatility surrounding the Russia-Ukrainian headlines. That has been a key driver to cryptocurrency markets this week, and also, of course, the equity markets. We are seeing Bitcoin as well as Ethereum trade down to the tune of about 3 to 4% today. And this follows Bitcoin down by about 6% over the past week over week performance, that is. We are still, however, seeing the overall market at about $1.8 trillion for cryptocurrency assets. Bitcoin, of course, representing about 40% of that, Ethereum about 18%. A lot of news items to hit today. We have heard that the Millennium trading app, Robinhood, is planning to use cryptocurrency as their move into developing and building their global brand. Now, of course, they are known for trading equities. Again, there's going to be a real push into the cryptocurrency business from a global perspective, according to Robinhood. New York Stock Exchange, interesting here. They want to be a marketplace for NFTs, remember, non-fungible tokens. And they want to do for NFTs what they've done for the equity business. Again, being a go-to place, a marketplace for NFTs. Speaking of NFTs, Universal Music Group is partnering with an NFT platform in order to develop NFTs for various record labels and artists and operating platforms that they have. Apparently, the first artist out of the gate for an NFT perspective is going to be a British songwriter and singer, Callum Scott. I had to look him up. Music is beautiful. In terms of other news around the globe, Singapore's bank, DBS Bank that is, has opened up a digital asset trading desk. That was in early 2021 for institutional investors. But what they're also planning to do is actually open a digital trading desk for retail investors in 2022. So interesting, again, to see the move from a traditional bank into the cryptocurrency world. But it does go both ways, because FTX, which is one of the largest, most predominant crypto exchanges, is actually apparently planning to also offer trading in derivatives and equities. So one-stop shop, perhaps we are calling this. Also interesting to note, the money continues to pour into new funds. The very well-known Silicon Valley VC firm, Sequoia Capital, is planning to launch a $500 to $600 million fund focused on liquid tokens. Also, really interesting to note when we think about mining for Bitcoin, and as we know, all the energy it takes to do that, the major energy company, ConocoPhillips, ticker there is COP, they're supplying a Bitcoin mining project with nat gas, natural gas from their Bakken Shale in North Dakota. Nat gas is a byproduct of oil production, and if there's no pipeline infrastructure to put the nat gas in, it basically just goes up into the air and burns in the air. It's called flaring. Instead, and this is not necessarily new news, but interesting to note that they have partnered with a Bitcoin mining company. And away from that as well, regulatory front, the former number 2 at the Bank of Canada, Carolyn Wilkins, did have an op-ed piece this week, this Wednesday, Financial Post, really saying that Canada needs to get on the forefront of putting some proper regulations and guardrails in the cryptocurrency space to make sure that financial stability exists. And keep in mind that this has been an increased focus in terms of the regulatory environment in Canada, given the fact that there's been more focus on cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin funding, perhaps some of the organizers of the convoy in Ottawa, the truckers' convoy, that is. Of course, we all know that. And lastly, I'm going to end on the Olympics here. Interesting to note that according to the PBOC in China, that there's about $300,000 worth of digital assets being used at the Olympics. This is China's digital asset, the E-CNY reason why this is important is because it's a bit of a test pilot for their digital currency. Bahamas, as an example, has a fully functioning digital currency. But think about the size and scale of China if, in fact, this is continuing to work. And we're seeing this play out at the Olympics. Apparently, again, $300,000 per day being used by various athletes and organizers. Nima, I'll leave it there. Back to you.
Digital currencies at the Beijing Olympics. Very interesting, Catherine. Thanks for that. For more on cryptocurrencies, along with analysis and news on the markets, be sure to tune in to Catherine Murray on The Buck Stops Here. All right, stay with us. We'll be right back after the break with Forum Daily's weekly energy update up next. We'll speak with GasWizard.ca's senior petroleum analyst, Dan McTeague, and of course, more news from around the world after that. So stay with us on Forum Daily News. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Up next, Forum Daily's weekly energy update with Dan McTeague, senior petroleum analyst at GasWizard.ca. All yours, Dan.
Well, thanks very much for that, Nima. Once again, an interesting week on the energy front. And here I'm not referring, of course, to that ever-increasing price of electricity that we're seeing across the country. We can discuss that a little later on. But for now, I think we've started to see really the peak of gasoline prices for the months of January and February. And we should start to see prices drop a little bit. Of course, all eyes are focused on the next steps of Vladimir Putin and his designs on Ukraine. My personal opinion is that he will probably move ahead. That could happen sooner than later, in which case, the next time, Nima, you and I talk, we will be looking at, again, prices that are beyond exceptional and anything that we could readily afford. I would see a scenario of his invasion and response by NATO beyond sanctions, which it needs to do, of probably in the order of $150 a barrel, which would lead to an average national gas price in the $1.80 range, with many regions. Think here of Vancouver Island, specifically Victoria, Newfoundland, Ontario, and Quebec pushing over $2 a liter, with the prairie provinces, Saskatchewan, Alberta, Manitoba, because they have less tax, maybe holding in the 180 range. I know that sounds speculative, but if I had told anybody, as I did last year, that you'd be paying $1.60 for a liter of gasoline in Toronto, they would have thought I was perhaps in need of some sleep. Either way, we're looking at a significant energy crisis pretty much globally, at a time in which demand is not very high traditionally, the time in which refineries have no trouble meeting demand, except for diesel. In colder winter and colder months, you usually use a little bit more diesel. It's a proxy for heating oil. We are not at the point yet where we start transitioning into refineries going through maintenance, and then, of course, a number of taxes and increases in the price of gasoline attendant with summer driving. And I have every expectation that as the COVID variant of Omicron, or Omicron's variant of COVID comes to an end, we're going to see a lot of people taking back to their cars almost at any price. What it means is that the supply crunch that we normally wouldn't see in the winter months is going to become accentuated in the months of April, May, and June, which means one way or another, we're going to continue to exceed these high prices. Short term, however, I think in the next week or so, we're probably going to see prices taper off a bit by 2 or 3 cents a liter. So the $1.82.9 that you saw in Vancouver, look for that to maybe moderate in the $1.73, $1.74 range. For Calgary, Edmonton, Regina, Saskatoon, Winnipeg, once retailers get through their inventory, I'm looking at about a 7 or 8 cent a liter decrease. So you may want to hold off until next week after this long weekend in many parts of the country, and you're likely to save a little bit. Ditto for Ontario. I think we're going to be down in the low $1.50s by Monday or Tuesday. And of course, Quebec dropping, Montreal in particular, dropping into the lower $1.60s. They did touch $1.71.9 earlier this week. But all of this, of course, really mean it will be based on what happens geopolitically. Also, keep in mind, there's a little bit of discussion about, Iran, the talks with Iran, and nuclear deal. The United States is desperate to get more oil into the global markets to keep prices down. It's very important for President Biden to be able to secure the support for his Democrats as they go into the midterms next November. unlike Canadians, and I've said this before because I have experience in my old jobs working at Gas Buddy, where I did most of my media in the United States. It's pretty clear Americans take fuel prices far more seriously than Canadians, and that could be a real spoiler for the Democrats if these prices remain high. The Maritimes, again, look for about a 2 to 3 cent decrease this week, pulling them back from the top, $1.57, $1.56. And for Newfoundland, finally, we've been paying $1.74 for a liter of gasoline. Look for that to drop a couple of pennies too. Look for diesel as well to start to unwind. If you're using diesel, on average about 5 cents this week. It looks like we're heading towards higher prices. As I mentioned last week to the House of Commons Committee, one of the things Ottawa should be doing, canceling the carbon tax increase on April 1st, and as well perhaps considering moving off on the clean fuel standard, which will apply to motorists at the end of this year. Either way, it's going to be a very choppy ride. The headlines are going to drive these prices. So fasten your seatbelts and check out gaswizard.ca, the little site that I work on, apart from the work and policy that we do at Canadians for Affordable Energy. Both those will be highly informative and give you a bit of a heads up a couple of days in advance to save you and I some money. Well, thanks again, Nima. We'll talk to you next week. Appreciate this.
Good to hear that we'll get a temporary break from these rising prices, Dan. Thanks for that. That was Dan McTeague, Senior Petroleum Analyst at gaswizard.ca. He's also the president of Canadians for Affordable Energy. All right, we'll be right back after the break with a look at news happening around the world. So stay with us. We'll be back on Forum Daily. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says the world is probably a more dangerous place now than during the Cold War. Tensions between the East and the West are at their highest point since the collapse of the Soviet Union in the 1990s. Mr. Guterres is warning that a small mistake or miscommunication between major powers could have catastrophic consequences. He told an annual security conference in Munich that he still believes the buildup of Russian troops around Ukraine won't result in a military conflict. Meanwhile, Western fears of a Russian invasion of Ukraine are spiking. This comes as a humanitarian convoy was hit by shelling and pro-Russian rebels ordering the evacuation of civilians from the conflict zone. American and European leaders are grasping for ways to keep the peace, and Russian President Vladimir Putin is holding out the possibility of diplomacy. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris told the annual Munich Security Conference that the U.S. still hopes Russia will de-escalate and remove some of its troops massed along Ukraine's borders. Some concerning news in the Middle East as Iran's supreme leader vowed on Thursday that his country would ramp up development of its civilian nuclear program. This comes as major world powers continued delicate talks in Vienna to revive Tehran's landmark nuclear deal. In a televised speech on Thursday, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei urged the importance of nuclear energy for Iran, while again asserting that it had no interest in nuclear weapons. The accord, which former President Donald Trump abandoned nearly 4 years ago, granted Iran sanctions relief in exchange for curbs on its atomic program. All right, turning to a daring rescue by the Portuguese Air Force, which used helicopters to save 22 crew members from a mammoth cargo ship that was carrying thousands of brand new luxury cars. The Felicity Ace is on fire and drifting in the Atlantic off the coast of the Azores. There are nearly 4,000 new vehicles aboard, including 189 Bentleys and 1,100 Porsches destined for American dealerships. Tensions continue to rise in Israel as the military says it fired interceptor missiles and protectively scrambled warplanes. This after what it described as a drone launched from Lebanon crossed its tense northern border. Hezbollah issued a statement saying that it had sent the Hassan drone inside Israel on a 40-minute observatory mission, after which the drone returned to Lebanon. Israel's military said the incursion set off air raid sirens in the country's north. Iron Dome interceptors were deployed and fighter jets patrolled the skies. Israel and Hezbollah are bitter enemies after fighting in a month-long war in 2006 that ended in a stalemate. Well, it looks like helicopter crews have rescued 2 stranded truck drivers aboard a burning ferry off western Greece. The Coast Guard says 278 passengers and crew have been rescued, but 11 others are still missing. The ferry was headed to Italy when the fire broke out near the Greek island of Corfu. In India, a court has sentenced 38 people to death. This for a series of bomb blasts in 2008 that left more than 50 dead in Gujarat state. It was the first time that so many accused have received death sentences in a single case in India. The attacks in Ahmedabad 13 years ago underscored communal tensions that are still reverberating in India to this day. According to police documents, the bombings were carried out by Muslim militants as revenge for the 2002 Hindu-Muslim violence in Gujarat. To the east, Hong Kong will postpone the election of its next leader until May 8th. This as it grapples with a worsening coronavirus outbreak with thousands of new infections daily. Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam says the election will be delayed 6 weeks from March 27th. This is because holding the polls as originally scheduled would pose significant public health risks, even if a committee of only 1,462 people is involved in the process. All right, we end our cast with an interesting new study from Australia and Japan, which found that doing just one bicep curl each day using a heavy weight increases muscle strength by more than 11%. 39 university students were split into groups that were told to complete one bicep curl a day at maximum effort for 3 seconds, 5 days a week for 4 weeks. The group tasked with doing the downward type of bicep curl showed the most significant results than other curl types. Professor Ken Nosaka, who designed the study, said, quote, "The study results suggest that a very small amount of exercise stimulus, even 60 seconds in 4 weeks, can increase muscle strength." All right, I'm Nima Rajan, and that'll do it for your look at national and international news for today. Remember, for more news on demand, you could always visit our website or follow us on social media. Take care, Canada. Have a great long weekend.